not everything that makes sense will go through the process. And not everything that goes through the process actually makes sense. But the third thing I learned was relationships trump everything.
If you can get up from being knocked down the 15th time and dust yourself off and have the confidence to think, you know what, that totally failed. I'm not feeding my family with that venture. However, I still believe in myself, and I know that I have good ideas, and in the past people have paid me for my goods and services, and they will do it again. And so if you can always depend on yourself, then no one has what I call financial blackmail over you.
I believe that you and I can choose our legacy today, and then we can live it out for the rest of our life to make sure that it's a solid, clear legacy.
Our premise is that if at the individual level, people can tell you what to do, where to live, what medication to take, where to send your kids for school, and what your kids need to learn, then we're never going to be free, right? We need the world back like we have in the wonderful state of Florida.
Legacy is a big word. Everybody wants one, but very few people intentionally design one. Many people think it's left to chance, but the reality is everyone creates a legacy. It's just that most do not end up with the one that they want. And then there's the idea that the older you get, the more you begin to believe it's too late to start building one. Now, I personally believe it's never too late to start, and today we're going to talk about your entrepreneurial legacy. Now, according to Entrepreneur Magazine, there's 5 things that those wanting to create a lasting legacy should focus on. The first seems basic, but let's go ahead and get started. Relationships. Now, the fact is most people don't know how to create or even manage their relationships. Most do not think through what value they can add to others because they're too busy trying to figure out how someone can benefit them. And they seem to live their entire life this way and don't ever manage relationships properly. In this article, it says, when dealing with people in your circle, take some time to think beyond the short term. It can be easy to go days or weeks simply viewing people as coworkers, clients, or competitors. In fact, these people are the ones who have the biggest hand in shaping your legacy going forward. Now, 3 things I learned my first term in the Florida House of Representatives. Real simple. One is, not everything that makes sense will go through the process. And not everything that goes through the process actually makes sense. But the third thing I learned was relationships trump everything. If you want to get something done politically, relationships are really what's going to make it happen. Now, the next part of this Entrepreneurial Magazine article I want to touch on, number 2, is social impact. What do we mean by this? Now, those that are building businesses today certainly want to make money for themselves and for their family. But let's talk about social impact in the form of your entrepreneurial legacy. Who are you going to help with your money? Now, this is important because certainly you're going to help you, your family, and the immediate people around you. But what outside big picture idea are you going to leave your thumbprint on in this life? See, this can become a big part of why you're driving your business and can ultimately be one of the biggest reasons you succeed. So social impact is one of the top 5 things you're going to want to focus on for your entrepreneurial legacy. The third thing we want to talk about here is thought leadership. What does this mean? It means simply, are you becoming an expert? Are you growing in whatever it is that you're focused on? Are you becoming someone day after day, month after month, year after year that people continue and even more people look towards for answers? Now, this is not as complicated as it seems. Simply being a part of what you're doing and be focused on what you're doing will help you gain some of that thought leadership. But I want to encourage you to take a next step on this, and that is have a design leadership development program. Have a mentor that you're plugged into. Read the right books, attend the right events, become a thought leader in your topic, and offer advice free to those around you. You will become a source that they seek after. The fourth thing that is mentioned here by Entrepreneurial Magazine is long-term growth. And I'm going to say this, that in whatever business you're in, you want to begin with the end in mind. Now, this is obvious. It's not the first time you've heard that, but you also want to treat people accordingly. Bottom line is you can't plan out long-term growth always. You can't really predict exactly what's going to happen over the next year or 2 or 3 or 5. And certainly you could have a game plan, but you can't really predict or plan out long-term growth. What you can do is you can become long-term growth, meaning the actions, the way you think, how you make decisions can epitomize a person, an individual, a business that's setting themselves up to be here for the long haul. And that alone becomes an attractive force for you, your business, and your legacy. The last thing I want to mention is the word succession. As we simply end on this 5th of 5 words, it really means, what are you doing to develop others? To develop an entrepreneurial legacy, obviously, you're going to grow a big business. It's hopefully going to have a big reason behind why you're growing that business. But until you take it to the next level, till you begin to develop others and strategically and intentionally develop your team to be able to run your business without you, you will not have the lasting legacy that you desire. Now let's jump to the foremost authority on leadership, Dr. John Maxwell, and hear what he has to say about legacy.
First thing that I think is important for you and I to understand is that we get to choose it. In fact, we not only get to choose it, but we get to choose it now. Now that's the mistake that most people make. They think that a legacy can't be chosen, and they think that it can't be discovered to the very end of their journey. And then people look at you and say, oh, this is what they were. This is what they believed in. This is who they were. I don't believe that at all. I believe that you and I can choose our legacy today, and then we can live it out for the rest of our life to make sure that it's a solid, clear legacy. For example, I can still remember 20 years ago sitting down with a group of leaders, and in that room we spent a day about leadership. And at the conclusion of that day, the one thing that came out of that meeting was that I wanted my legacy to be leadership. I wanted that to be my brand. I wanted that to be who I was. When people saw John Maxwell, I wanted them to see leadership. And out of that meeting that day, we made a determination that that's who we were, that's how we would behave, and that's what I want my legacy to be. Now, 20 years later, that's what I'm known for. When you say John Maxwell, people think of leadership. Well, I want you to know that that was very intentional. There was nothing lucky about that. There was nothing that we just stumbled onto. It was just a fact that we determined that's what my legacy should be. And then you back up that decision and determination with your behavior. Now, in that meeting, if we'd have said it's going to be leadership, and then I would not have written any books on leadership, and I wouldn't teach on leadership, and I wouldn't have any companies on leadership, guess what? That wouldn't have been my legacy. So talking about it or determining it is not enough. You determine what you want your legacy to be, and then you act on it. And you bring resources in to bolster that. People, money, opportunities, everything that'll help you to make that legacy the one that you want.
Now, our guest today is a legacy entrepreneur. Gary Pinkerton is a wealth strategist, military veteran, entrepreneur, speaker, best-selling author, and real estate investor. He has degrees in engineering from the U.S. Naval Academy, the University of Illinois, the American College. He also commanded the attack submarine USS Tucson in his 25 years as a Navy nuclear submarine officer. He was a Pentagon Division Director for the Joint Chiefs and a senior ethics professor at the Naval Academy before retiring as a captain. Gary is passionate about furthering entrepreneurship and helping American families achieve agency, establish a lasting financial legacy, and reduce their taxes. He lives in Florida with his wife, Sue, and their 2 sons. Gary, welcome to the show. Thanks for being with us today. It's certainly a privilege to have someone with your background here on the Constitutional Entrepreneur. Let's just get right into it. Let's kick it off. Let's talk about a word I know is dear to you. Let's talk about the word freedom. And when I think of this, I think of certainly freedom as a country in the United States, but there's also freedom as an entrepreneur. There's financial freedom. There's lots of words that can be attached to freedom. Tell the audience what freedom means to you, to Gary Pinkerton.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Thanks so much for having me on the podcast. One of your earlier episodes. It's a true honor when somebody brings you on like that. So I wanted to make sure I said that. And it's been incredible being a friend of yours, being a fellow conservative in the state of Florida. Just awesome to see what you've got going on in your world and how you're helping to maintain the values that, we've brought up here in Florida and that you're just strengthening and highlighting. It's incredible. To me, I think freedom is all of those, right? Like you need all of them to be able to achieve lasting freedom of a country. The country needs people who are free, and the people who are free need what is really my fighting word. And I guess what I would say, going back to answer your question directly, to me, freedom means agency. And it's a word that Ayn Rand popularized, several decades ago. And if you go back far enough in the Andrew Carnegie world, you would hear it all the time back there. And words meanings change as we go through time, right? Like the word scheme now has a very negative connotation. But a business owner back in the day, we never said the word entrepreneur, but what an entrepreneur was a business owner who was solving problems in their community. And they would call that business an ongoing scheme, right? So words change. And today agency is tied to things like CIA and NSA and things like that. But the word agency, when you bring it down to the individual level, means a person who has the ability to operate or act in their own self-interest, right? Like, so you have the ability, the financial ability, the time freedom, the support network to operate the way you want to operate. If you want to live a specific place, if you want your day to go like it goes, and you have the ability to control that, then you have agency. And for some people, that means being the CEO of somebody else's company. That's awesome. Maybe it means you want to be the head guy who's testing vehicles for General Motors. Again, awesome. I actually would probably enjoy that job. But for some people, it means when the boss says you need to come in on Saturday and you need to miss that child's band recital, or you can't go camping with your family, then it's the agency means the ability not to have to do that. And the reason agency is so incredibly important to me, the reason freedom is important to me, is because without agency, we don't have freedom. That's my premise. My premise is that if at the individual level, people can tell you what to do, where to live, what medication to take, where to send your kids for school, and what your kids need to learn, then we're never going to be free, right? We need the world back like we have in the wonderful state of Florida. I heard you say on one of your earlier podcasts that, I was a good W-2 employee, but let me tell you, that check wasn't big, right? And that's intentional. A very dear friend of mine, close personal friend and client, is Mike Shirkey. He was ranking Republican chair senator up in the state of Michigan. And, I asked him once, I'm like, hey, what's the pension look like? He's like, Gary, if there was a pension, I would not be in this job, right? Like, he's very, very proud of the fact that he is the old school George Washington type, right? Where George was, kicking and screaming, pulled in to be president of the United States and in charge of our Revolutionary Army. And then when they said, we need you a second time, and he's like, nope, I'm going back to the farm. And they convinced him that we were going to lose the country if he didn't do it. And so he did. And he obviously lost money. Donald Trump is clearly losing money and time with his family to do what he does. To me, that's a true patriot, and it's agency and it's freedom. But if we don't have freedom at the individual level, then the government will forget that they work for us. And I think there's signs of that all around the country. There has been, it comes and goes, right? So to me, that's what it's all about.
Awesome. Gary, great definition. I love the detail on that. Now, listen, I consider you a constitutional entrepreneur, somebody that believes in the founding principles of our country, that these were entrepreneurial principles, that if we deviate from these principles, we cause conflict in the U.S. just because of the fabric of how we were designed. But I also, having got to know you a little bit and know what you're passionate about here, I consider you a legacy-minded entrepreneur, someone that approaches business with that, what am I going to be remembered by as I'm doing this type of approach? So let's go into that a little bit. This podcast is about legacy, and I want to kick off this question because I know you talk a lot about betting on yourself, and I was telling a group the other day this very thing. I said, one of the defining attributes of an entrepreneur is that they're willing to bet on themselves. But tell us what this means to you. You talk about it a lot, betting
Yeah.
on yourself as an entrepreneur, as a legacy-minded entrepreneur, what that means.
Yeah, that really gets down to the financial side very quickly on betting on yourself. I have tried things at all different levels. When I talk with my now 1,000 clients plus, we talk all the time about, I want to get to a point where I have passive income. And I always caution them about passive income because we think of passive income as being something where you don't have to do any work. Like somebody else does all the work and somehow you're still safe. And when you see the world go through economic times, like when you see the Great Depression in America, it was only those people that could personally provide goods and services that were always safe. Like if you can get up from being knocked down the 15th time and dust yourself off and have the confidence to think, you know what, that totally failed. I'm not feeding my family with that venture. However, I still believe in myself and I know that I have good ideas. And in the past, people have paid me for my goods and services and they will do it again. And so if you can always depend on yourself, then no one has what I call financial blackmail over you. Meaning no one can, again, make you do something you don't want to do. And they can't convince you that it's all, that it's hopeless, that it will never happen again. Because if you do believe in yourself, then it doesn't matter if you lose all your money out there in passive investments, which I've done numerous times. I'm still doing today as we talk. I went on this venture as part of my business plan to learn a lot about passive investing, about syndications, about franchises, to be able to teach that to my clients. And I went way too fast and I failed at a lot of them. But you know what? Once I realized that what really matters is that I can still add value and I can dust myself off and move forward, that has made a tremendous difference in my mindset and my ability to keep taking care of my family and building that future legacy. Really the legacy is what ideas and what examples do we pass on to the next generation?
I love it. And that rolls right into really this last part of what I want to dig in and get your ideas on. And it has to do with the word legacy. You mentioned you have 1,000 plus clients, so you're not new to this. You've been doing this for a while. You've probably seen commonalities amongst some of your top tiered clients that are legacy minded. Give us some of the three biggest takeaways that you've noticed working with the most successful clients you have in regards to legacy. What are they thinking about? What are they doing? What are they types of things are they participating in if they want to have that walk away legacy?
Yeah, first of all, there's really two, in my mind, there's two massive definitions for legacy. They're not different. It's just like subpart A and B, right? And so legacy in one element is about how long is the cars, the line of cars that are following the hearse, right? For Nelson Mandela, it was massive. For Ronald Reagan, it was massive. For Donald Trump, I have no doubt it's going to be massive. And if you have a short one, it means that you didn't work too hard on the legacy, or your legacy, what you stood for, either people didn't agree with, it was evil, or you didn't make it clear. So like getting really clear on what you're about, that's the first most important thing. Like, what do we stand for? Like, I have a friend who, his family, I think it's awesome, but his family, and maybe the great Chamberlains do this, because I really, and just, it's awesome to watch your family and your story and how you've taught entrepreneurship at the dinner table. That he would have they would have placemats that was like their crest, like what they were about. And everyone in the family knew what they were about. And I think if you watch, I keep bringing this back to Trump, but we are in the middle of the RNC while we're taping this, but if you watch Don Jr. and all members of the family, they're very, very clear on what the family's about. You may not would agree with the family's about, but they're clear about what that is, right? And it's great. I think Don Trump can go to his grave knowing that his great-great-great-grandchildren are going to know what the family stands for. So like that's the first most important thing, is get clear on what you stand for and get help on that if you want. Get a coach, get a mentor. I have a business mindset coach, and she helps me get super clear. What am I about? She helped me understand that the word was agency. She said, Gary, really, you're about agency. I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about, right? I didn't understand. So I think that's really important. Get very clear on what you're about, and then make sure it's something that the family agrees, right, is those values. And then I always talk about, you essentially have to have a financial means in place so that the family can endure, right? There has to be some way to bring money in. So there is that whole financial side. Is the family running a business? I highly recommend that. But whatever it is, if you just have passive investments and you're really good at it, like make sure that is enduring. So there needs to be like a legacy trust kind of structure there so that the money does sustain, just so there's a structure there for it. But far more important to that is the two things we do with the future generations. And I focus, because I have kids like you do, I focus on really my children as being where I focus this attention. But you have to spend time around those that will carry the torch after you. And it may, you may not have children. It may be the members of your company, your very close allies. It may just be best friends. It may be your nieces and nephews. It doesn't really matter. But those that you want to impart this legacy and all your experiences that you've learned over time, who will I impart that on? There's really two things you got to know, right? You have to write it down. You have to be clear on what you teach them about that. And then you got to spend time with them. One of the things I love about what you and your wife do is you spend a ton of time around your children. And that's incredibly important. And that's one of the things that caused me to dramatically change what I was doing. I spent nearly 30 years, 26 years in the military being away from my children. Yet my father, who passed no financial wealth to us, passed an amazing amount of legacy because I was always around him. My sister and I both have all of his ideals and his mannerisms and his way of thinking about what's good and bad inside us. And so you have to do both to be successful, right? You have to pass a structure and some of the financial side, but it's nowhere near as important as getting very clear on what you are and who you are and spending the time with the kids to teach it to them.
Great advice, Gary. And I'll jump on the bandwagon with our children here. It's exciting to be able to invest time into them. Of course, I don't know how old yours are. Mine are starting to move out, so I get we spend a teeny bit less time than we used to as they were all in the house. But it's really awesome to see them go off and take what they've learned and do something with it. I know you experienced that as well, and that's part of the blessing of that investment. Gary, if someone wants to get a hold of you, if someone wants to learn more about what you do, I know you may be limited on how many clients you can or can't take, but give us the best ways to connect with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So my friend calls me a narcissist, but I think most people out there who want to attract people to them, and if their brand is them, then it's our names, right? So it's Gary@GaryPinkerton.com is really the easiest way to do it. I'll happily share my cell phone or whatever would be helpful, but that actually, frankly, is the easiest way. That sends you to my team. I have a growing team. We're 5 people now inside Paradigm Life, which is a company out in Utah ran by my best friend and mentor, Patrick Donahoe. And there's 30 plus of us there with a network of 250 people trying to help individuals gain agency by teaching fundamental financial and business and tax ideas that will put in place at least the money side of it. But there's also the amazing course about how to teach legacy, how to teach ideals to your children there.
Awesome, Gary. Thanks so much for being on the show. I'm sure we're going to have you back. And anyway, God bless. Have a great one.
Yes, sir. Thank you.